Ireland has a problem with Airbnb, and it's had that problem for a very long time, and the Irish government has promised many times to solve it. So how come it's been delayed yet again? The issue around short-term lets, such as Airbnb or adverts posted on booking.com, is that they're very hard to enforce and to monitor around the country. Current planning rules state that if you would like to operate an Airbnb for more than a certain number of days per year, you have to get special planning permission. However, city and county councils find it very hard to keep track of these Airbnbs and other short-term lets all around the country because most of the time they don't know where they're located or for how many days a year they're being rented out. So, what has the government been trying to do? The last government promised to bring in a special register on Fáilte Ireland, which will mean that every short-term let operator will have to register on this register and follow the planning rules that are in place. Each property would have their own number, and this would mean that properties will be able to be followed much more easily by staff on city and county councils and other local authorities across the country. So that if they're breaking their laws, local authorities can clamp down on them and impose a fine. They can also impose a fine on the actual platform on which the adverts are being advertised, such as Airbnb. However, following many pushbacks from the European Commission, the Irish government was forced to change its position. A couple of years ago, the last then government, made up of Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Greens, said that Airbnb would be banned in all areas apart from those which have a population limit of below 5,000. These rural areas specifically benefit from short-term lets as a way of keeping their tourism sectors alive. However, the rules would have been linked to residential pressure zone legislation, or RPZs for short. Now the Fianna Fáil Fine Gael independent government has said that they would go ahead with the clampdown on Airbnbs. However, they're not proceeding with the original plans from the last administration. While they're still going ahead with the Fáilte Ireland register, they have now said that instead of the 5,000 population cap, this would be expanded up to 10,000. This would mean that there would be a greater number of rural areas which would escape the so-called Airbnb clampdown. The long-awaited register was supposed to be going to Cabinet for sign-off this week. However, it has been delayed yet again. Ireland's clampdown on short-term lets is supposed to kick in next year at the same time as the EU's own clampdown on Airbnbs and other short-term lets. This means that the government has until then to not only put in place the Fáilte Ireland register, but the accompanying legislation around the 5,000 population cap. The register is being heralded by the Tourism and Enterprise Minister Peter Burke, whereas the changes of planning rules are being heralded by James Browne. The new Fáilte Ireland register is being brought forward by Tourism and Enterprise Minister Peter Burke, whereas the changes of planning laws are being brought forward by James Browne, who is the Housing Minister. However, it isn't until all these new changes are brought in, legislated for and signed off that the long promised clamp down on short-term lets will finally be put in place. For more details on this story, follow the Irish Independent.